It has been announced that the Apollo 11 command module pilot, Michael Collins, has met the same fate as Jack Swigert and died of cancer. He was 90 years old. Collins had previously wrote in his Carrying the Fire autobiography that if he ever got a cataract, he tried to blame it on Gemini 10. One can only wonder if he tried to blame his cancer on Apollo 11. Following the death of Neil Armstrong in 2012, the Apollo 11 crew is now survived only by Buzz Aldrin. Rest in peace, Michael Collins.
I had a happy little home in the command module. Behind the Earth, it was very behind the moon. Excuse me, it was very behind the Earth. It was very behind the moon. Excuse me, it was very behind the Earth. It was very behind the moon. Excuse me, it was very behind the Earth. It was very behind the moon. Excuse me, it was very behind the Earth. It was very behind the moon, excuse me, it was very peaceful. No one in mission control was yakking at me and wanting me to do this, that, and the other. So I was very happy. It was a happy home. Yeah.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
All Apollo missions were carried out openly in the full view of a world audience. Thousands witnessed the Saturn V rockets blasting off from Cape Canaveral. Television audiences around the world witnessed the successful splashdown of the capsule in the Pacific Ocean. NASA provided live TV transmissions of astronauts walking on the moon. On the face of it, all was transparent and open to scrutiny. But was it really so transparent? From the moment the rocket disappeared into the sky in Florida, and the final retrieval of the capsule in the Pacific Ocean, the only source of information was from one single informant. And that was NASA. The mass media simply echoed the official NASA's story. And the pro-NASA devotees eagerly accepted everything. There was no independent verification from any other source as to what happened in between. But the world audience was convinced that all was true. Project Apollo is a detective story of gigantic proportions covering 15 years of scientific research. It involves several thousand technical documents, days of audio communications between the astronauts, hundreds of pages of mission transcripts, thousands of photographs, and hundreds of hours of video. In faking the Apollo missions, it is inevitable that some errors were made. British author Trevor Weaver has painstakingly researched this evidence, and together with the work of many other dedicated researchers, has identified those elements of deceit in which the fakers made errors which expose the fakery. Trevor Weaver is the author of 2 books on Project Apollo. His first book was written at a time when he believed that the Apollo moon landings were true. This first book, Man on the Moon: Fact or Fiction, is available on Amazon. It is an impartial investigation into the evidence for and against the Apollo moon landings. As a result of the research into this book, he became aware that there were some elements of the story which did not stand up to evidential scrutiny. As a result, he produced a second book, The Apollo Moon Hoax: How Did They Do It? This second book highlighted those incontrovertible elements of the story which were clearly untrue. This book is also available on Amazon. Now in his third book on the subject, The Apollo Moon Hoax Exposing the Deceit. Trevor exposes many new elements of the deceit which incontrovertibly show that the Apollo missions were faked. This third book will be available from the Amazon bookstore in January 2021.
And welcome back to the Apollo Detectives. We're here with another little video for you to enjoy, where we question the veracity of one of the most important events in all of history. I'm joined by a number of gentlemen here who you will have seen before if you've watched other episodes of this series. I'm Ben Emlyn-Jones, and I'd like to introduce them for you. First of all, we have our esteemed producers and directors, Neil Geddes-Ward. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Ben. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us once more on the Apollo Detectives. And we're recording this in April 2021, just as we're starting to hear about the Artemis, which is the successor to Apollo, gearing up. And Elon Musk has now been selected to have the lunar lander, his version of a lunar lander, be on the moon. So I actually put in a comment on Facebook group the other day that I think it's the world's largest coffee flask going to the moon, which would be interesting. I just hope it doesn't topple over because it's quite a big thing. But anyway, yeah, thanks very much for joining us, and it should be an interesting discussion.
I'm looking forward to it. And we also have your co-producer and director, Andy Chaplin. Hey, Andy, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, Ben. Just kind of toddling along. I did a car boot sale today, so I'm a bit knackered, but I'll just sit and observe and chip in if I can.
That's a very interesting background you've got there. I like it very much.
I thought it'd be quite suitable. Can you see the radiation glow around me?
Yeah.
Especially like my Cyberdog T-shirt kind of like deflects against the radiation.
You made it through the belts then.
Something's got to deflect against that radiation, yes. As our other two contributors, our panel members will talk about. First of all, we have the welcome return of Mr. Nexus himself, Marcus Allen. Hi, Marcus.
Oh, Ben, thank you very much for moderating yet another fascinating discussion. I know there are going to be some good and informative pictures, which I know Scott has got, but I do like Andy's background. I think that is really most appropriate.
Very much indeed, yeah.
And
fine.
It's a question mark because, we don't want to force people to believe what we believe in. We're questioning it. We're not saying man definitely didn't go to the moon. We're just saying, is it lies? Is it real? Who knows?
Good point. That's fair enough, isn't it? And one guy who asks these questions more than anyone else, all the way from Canada, we have the welcome return of Scott Henderson. Hello, Scott.
Dan, it's a pleasure to be here. I really do like that aura around there. It kind of reminds me of the video of them kind of half faded out when they're running back and forth and they kind of go transparent and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I remember
So
that.
it's a
Yeah.
nice effect. It's very fitting. Indeed.
I've got the Wardenclyffe Tower. You can just see the Wardenclyffe Tower there. So I thought it's not exactly the same, but I thought it looks good. It makes me look like I've got some kind of halo too. So I think we're all looking good and we're all ready to delve into this particular subject. It is, of course, I was going to say, I should add to this actually. If you want people who watch us and still believe the Apollo moon landings were real, there's no shortage of those. They very often join the comment section and they tell us what they think, don't they? All the time, sometimes in no uncertain terms. So feel free to disagree with us if you wish. So we will begin. I believe Scott, you have a presentation. Is that right?
Yes, I can. If you like, I can share the screen and we can start right off. What I'd like to start with, of course, is showing that all of the equipment you see in the Apollo photographs are simply mock-ups of pieces of equipment, and they weren't just prepared just for a simulation to fake it. They couldn't even be bothered to do that. The stuff that they were practicing with over the years is the same equipment you see in the Apollo photographs. This stuff is just worn out, beat up, rusted, molded, and everything you can imagine in these photographs. So I'm going to share the screen here and we'll have a little look, and I'll just show you exactly what we're talking about. You know, many people say, "Oh, can you prove that this stuff is
okay, we can see the screen.
worn out pieces of whatever, right?" And I mean, all of this equipment, of course, was prepared in a clean room and loaded on top of the Saturn V rocket, and so-called went to the moon. And when they took it out in its pristine condition, you can see that it's aged, cracked, completely worn out here. That's just one example. You can see it's all curling up on the edges and everything else here, right around. Everything covered in
devil's advocate hat. Would a skeptic say, "Oh, well, that's because it, spent all that time flying to the moon and all the G-force and everything that was doing it"?
You mean like a tent is crunched up into a bag, and when you unroll it, it's always a bit crumpled, sort of thing?
Well, yeah.
If you took a piece of foil out and set it on your barbecue, and 5 minutes later you took a photograph of it, it looked pretty pristine. Okay. This is just absolutely bleached with the sun, cracked right back. You can see it's all cracked back. Just been out there for age. They were using it to practice with. They never even bothered to replace it with a new piece of equipment for the final simulation. This thing's been laying on its back forever. And all the mud stuck to it across here. You can see the rust coming through.
Strange.
Okay. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying this is just stuff they were practicing with. And as you come down there, of course, and you look at the bottom, and this, of course, is styrofoam. And of course, you can go online anywhere and look at what happens to styrofoam if you put it in a vacuum chamber. Okay.
I wonder if it comes with a guarantee leaflet as well.
This had taillight warranty, all of this stuff, that's for sure. But you can see that it's just worn out stuff that they were practicing with. And like I said, they didn't bother. You'd think with the budget they had that they would at least make an effort to work a little harder on the equipment. And there's a couple of really fuzzy little photographs here. And this is rather difficult to see, but you can see this is part of a spacesuit. And this is part of a strut right there. There's a strut there. This is the secondary strut. And the spacesuit is on top of it. And now when you take a closer look, I'm going to show you right in here. There it is laying. There's the spacesuit. That's where the helmet attaches on the thing. It's laying over top of the strut.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, if it's laying on top of the strut, somebody took it off.
Right. And I can see the lunar surface just behind.
The lunar surface is there. The suit, they're probably taking a break, having lunch or something. They took the suit off, threw it over top of the strut, and they're having lunch.
You can't really. Can't see very clearly.
They did not have an extra EVA suit.
Yeah. So what you're saying,
isn't being worn, and it's outside.
This is part of the suit pushing through the inside of the helmet and up an open visor.
That's not a helmet visor. That's the secondary strut.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
It's-
This is just laying on top of the secondary strut.
Right.
It does look like, for example, you could see very clearly the lunar surface, which indicates that the photograph is the right way up. So,
Right.
which it does look odd, because if this was an astronaut, he'd be sort of lying down with his head.
No,
his head-
he's not.
yeah.
He's not in the suit.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point in the entire Apollo missions I've ever seen them lying down. They fell over a couple of times.
Right.
I never saw them lying down.
Right.
Never.
But that's the foil of the secondary strut, and the suit is just laying over it.
Right.
So the suit is not being worn, which
Wow.
means the astronaut is not in a suit. Okay, they didn't have an extra suit to lay one down, so it's got to be the suit that he was wearing that he took off. And he can't be on the lunar surface and not in a suit.
On the subject of budget, which is it's an interesting point, because of course they had all the money they needed, because the Congress had approved a $20 billion budget for a space mission, so they could just take whatever they wanted from that. Well, according to Mary Bennett and David Percy, there were individuals working on this hoax who deliberately made it shoddy in several different ways. They deliberately produced low quality material in order to alert people, maybe meant several generations ahead when history had moved on, people like us, in other words, to the fact that what they were producing was not real. I mean, do you think that's possible, Scott?
I think they were so focused on trying to get that rocket off the ground for the big show there that they weren't really concerned with it. If you watch that little video clip, it's going to give you an insight into the attitude and characters of the astronauts themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You can't fire these guys. Okay? They're household names worldwide.
Yeah.
Try and control them. You can't. And you'll see that in the video, that you will not be able to control these guys. They were highly intelligent. They had a lot of fun. They had 3 of their very close personal friends die. Okay? Yep. You try and stop them. You can't threaten these guys. You can't do anything. I imagine they couldn't even get these guys to behave enough to pull off Apollo 13, so they had to make something else up. They probably couldn't film it. Once you watch that video of them on the Apollo 12 and the messing around that they're doing there, try and put these guys in. I mean, Alan Bean put all of those comments in the cue cards as well. It's just unbelievable. This particular shot here, just to show you just how fake it is, just an old piece of particle board, call it a solar panel.
It doesn't. It's not made of solar panel material. Because Apollo 12, of course,
it's just a piece of wood, right? And this one was probably a countertop, and it was glued down onto something else, and they pulled it up.
From that photo, right. It doesn't. Yeah,
they're actually calling that a solar panel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there were photographs from Apollo 12, but it's interesting there was no TV footage, unlike 11, where it was televised. It was this unique experience live from the moon. Apollo 12 was not televised. There was no motion pictures because apparently the TV camera broke down. I mean, there's a whole story behind that.
Just the color TV camera. Okay.
But they didn't have a spare camera. They should have one camera.
But like, they didn't even take time. This equipment is simply mock-ups of what it should have looked like that they were going to send to the moon. But this stuff here, there's not even there's not in any time, energy, or anything into it. It was the stuff that they just put together. They needed to have Farouk Al-Bez set up, but he was the time management specialist, so he needed to know how long it would take to get the equipment out and how to set it up. So they make all this mock-up equipment, so at least they have something to work with. So they make a lightweight suit for them to work in, because on Earth, you can't wear a 180-pound suit. So you need to make a lightweight suit, so at least you had something to work with to give you an idea what it would take and what the timeline is going to take to set this equipment up. But it's not the real equipment. It's not
Scott,
the real suit.
Have you ever been to either the Science Museum in London or, Kennedy Space Center in America and tried their actual moon gloves? Have you ever done that?
No.
I have. So in London, in the Science Museum, there's a I don't know if I think it's just a mock-up of the lunar lander, and they've actually got like actual moon gloves in like a tank area. So you put your hands in, and there's tasks to do, like getting some nuts and bolts and kind of putting them together. And on the ends of the gloves, they've got kind of quite hard kind of like domes that go over the fingers and thumbs.
Yeah.
And it's near damn impossible to do anything in those gloves. And it even says, imagine being an astronaut and something along the lines of, imagine being an astronaut and having to do kind of quite delicate tasks. Imagine how hard that would be.
Did they pressurize them for you?
Say again?
Was it they pressurized?
No. So it wasn't in that kind of it wasn't a kind of environment, but they were kind of like either replica. I'm pretty sure they're replica gloves, but they're kind of quite thick and they're padded, and it's almost like one of those kind of like scientific chambers where you kind of handle things in a hazmat zone, and it's got like a perspex screen in front of you, and it's literally got like a little sign that says, "Wouldn't it be?" Imagine how hard it would be being an actual astronaut and having to do tasks wearing these gloves. And you'd think, yeah, it would be extremely hard. I'm kind of thinking now it would be actually impossible, because even if you're wearing gardening gloves, for instance, if you're wearing gardening gloves, you haven't got hard domed tips. So you can still kind of like feel things. You can still have like dexterity. But these particular gloves that they say are the moon gloves, you can't do anything. You can't, there's no dexterity, there's no intricacy. It's literally you could pick up a hammer and that's about it. You couldn't do things like twist kind of knobs or kind of screw things together. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
Well, there's many different versions of the gloves out there now. They've been trying to compensate everything else. That's like with all the documentation. I mean, they've upgraded that surveyor a bunch of times, and now one of them is a high gain antenna instead of 2 solar panels. So
yeah,
they just make up whatever they want whenever they want. And I have the documents showing that they're 2 solar panels.
Well, they certainly look like solar panels.
And of course, you're looking at the ability of the sun to reproduce itself and move a little bit here, because you've got a beautiful double shadow.
Yeah.
and what's happening in this photograph, you're going to see the shadow off to the left-hand side, and then the next one, you see it. Now it's moved, it's up to the top, moved over a little bit, and then the third one, now it's off to the right.
These double shadows,
They're adjusting the lighting.
If there really is double shadow, this is the question the skeptics always ask. Where are the double shadows? Now, is that an actual real single shot from the moon, or supposedly from the moon?
Yes.
It's there in black. You can see it,
You can pull these. You can pull this number up. It's magazine 659213.
Cool. Well, you wouldn't get that effect from the sun,
right there. There's a series of 4 of them, and then of course it's back to the left-hand side again, and then they finally get it. It's fairly close. It's almost even when you get to 9215. Right.
So they were moving these spotlights around to get the effect.
I don't know if they're moving the spotlights around.
Moving the props.
Okay, but how does the shadow move? You got to move the lights to make the shadow move. There's absolutely no other way around it. Of course, this particular photograph here to show this is one that will really show this machine was completely damaged. They actually dropped this thing, okay, on the Apollo 15 when they were doing it. The strap broke on it while they were trying to come in. It probably hooked one of the legs on the thing when they were setting it down on the gantry crane, and it literally broke the leg right off. That caused them to then do a stand-up EVA, then have a little nap for 6 hours. That gave them a good 20 hours of time for them to work on it. And then the first thing they did, they jumped on the rover and they took off. Okay, the first thing you're going to do there is set up the experimental equipment, just in case you have to, if your time was cut short, at least it would be there. That would be your priority, would be set it up. But they didn't do that. They went out for a full EVA for close to 8 hours. Then
Scott.
they came back, got back inside, had a little nap, got up, and then on the second time, they didn't go out. They didn't set up the experimental equipment. They didn't even set the flag up. And if you're a good American, the first thing you are going to do is set the flag up, right? And salute it, that kind of stuff. Even after the second EVA, they just went out for 6.5 hours. Then they came back and so-called set it up. But by the time they got back there, the stagehands had already set up the experimental equipment, and they get a little shot them with the flag, right?
So they came back from this driving. They went off for a drive in the rover and came back, and this stuff had already been done.
They couldn't show an outside shot anywhere around this machine because the legs were broken right off on the thing. And if you look on the left-hand side, this one's still, it's broken right off the thing. Yet it's sitting on the outside edge of the pad on it. And this leg is 32 inches from the secondary strut down. Okay. This one's quite a bit longer coming down. This is the strut that they replaced right on this side. And it's a good foot longer. You can see it there.
Well, if they damaged it.
Okay.
If it was damaged.
And they can only get shorter. They can't get longer. Okay. And then you have, right in here, you have the little ball joint. That piece broke right off. And there's the two broken ball joints laying on the ground that they had to replace. Okay. But, like I said, why would they leave them laying on the ground? See this foam sitting here, this pink foam sitting up here?
Yeah.
It goes up in here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and they just cover it with Mylar just to give the vehicle some structure.
Right. You never leave little fiddly pieces lying around. I mean, that's how you get lost of it.
Yeah, but they just leave it laying around. Now, when you get to Apollo 16, this same stuff is still laying on the ground. You get to Apollo 17, the same stuff is still laying on the ground. They didn't clean it up between sets.
So the Apollo, these other missions have exactly the same appearance. They have the same objects around the LEM.
They just left this junk laying down. They never... They might have re-raked the set and changed the background scenes and stuff, but they basically dropped it down in about the same spot. I don't think they moved that big gantry crane too far when they were doing it.
Scott,
and this thing, the only thing you'll see, Apollo 12, they show them loading this down, but part of this stuff right here is part of the support structure on it. When it hit the ground, when this thing hit the ground, when it fell, and you'll see it in the landing of Apollo 15, right? You can actually see this leg break right off in the video on it. The rover was snapped right off completely, and this thing is broken down because this is the other piece of it here. This round hoop here, this all belongs to here. Okay, and the only thing you'll see it is in this position in 16 and 17. You'll never see it in its upright position because it's all broken apart. What else have I got? Okay, this is where the rover was attached. Right there. Those are the legs laying down. There's the thing when it hit the ground, it actually crumpled the exhaust bell housing on it, right? And that's just a piece of aluminum. Okay, titanium won't wrinkle like that. Titanium is very brittle. It would just snap. Okay, but these things you can see right here, you can see that they're just shredded right off, and there's where they should have been attached on the cables. These are the lowering control arms, snapped right off. When the thing hit the ground, it did that. It's in the photographs. It's the best they could clean it up. But I mean, when you think about it, why would they have to do 2 EVAs with the rover get away, and the rover was damaged. And NASA claims that one of the batteries didn't work, and it was four-wheel steering, and the front-wheel steering didn't function. Okay, but on the second EVA, it got working again, because they apparently parked it in the shade, and it came back to life again.
Marcus, I've got a photograph question for you. Could we go back? Can we go back to that image, Scott?
Yeah, just this one.
Just quickly. No, the image you just showed.
The one following
That
it,
one.
you mean?
That one, okay.
Yeah, that one. Marcus, what's your thoughts on that kind of like that red glow at the bottom? Would that happen on the moon, or what's going on there? Can you describe?
Well, what looks like a red glow is actually a shadow. It's the shadow of the craft. You can see where it's directly illuminated. Now that would appear to be, obviously it's a color film they were using, and it appears that the color balance has been completely destroyed, because it shouldn't show red, it should show black.
Let me show you the original. This one is NASA color enhanced this, by the way, to brighten it up under there.
Right.
And I will pull up the original.
Basically, what I'm going to ask Marcus is whether, I know I've seen this with kind of 1960s type photographs of kind of like how it's not quite rendered properly or not quite shown up properly. I was wondering if that is the case on the moon, if whatever's going on there, the physics of that, whether it would actually happen on the moon.
Well, seeing as it's not on the moon, well, because if it was, the film wouldn't have worked, as we know.
Okay, there's the original.
Right.
Okay. So.
Okay, and NASA actually, there it is there, and it says adjusted JPEG. Okay.
Right.
You download it, it's the adjusted JPEG. They brighten it up underneath and I don't know why they wanted to brighten that up.
No.
Okay, but that's the original like that. So you don't see that color in there when that could be part of it.
One other thing, Scott, could you have a zoom in on the gloves in the chat box? I've actually found the gloves that they've got in the Science Museum that you can actually put your hands in, and you'll see exactly what I mean by the hard kind of domes on the fingers.
Oh, the plasticky things.
Yeah. So if you go into the chat, find the chat box, and then kind of like have that on the kind of screen view. There we are. Zoom in on one of those, and you can find this on the Smithsonian website if anyone's interested.
Right.
You should be able to just click on it and it should expand.
Yeah, I'll just save it here and then.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, looks like those are Apollo gloves, because they all had those little blue polyurethane thumb or thimble type things on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a variety version of them. This looks like it's supposed to be from Apollo 11 because they didn't use the cuff checklist. It was the instructions that they have were stitched on in Apollo 11.
I
want
to know how on earth you can do anything with those on your fingers.
Well, you can't.
Okay, well, let me just see. I'll pull up what they have for display here.
I would like people listening at home to get themselves some gardening gloves, cut the fingertips off, get some ping pong balls, cut those in half, tape on the ping pong balls, and then just try and do normal stuff at home, like, opening the oven and putting food in, or getting your keys out, opening a car, changing gear, that kind of thing, wearing those.
There's Neil's official left-hand glove.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. How can you do anything? How can you operate tools? How can you grip things? How can you twist knobs and dials and unscrew things?
Would that be an outer glove that goes over something that's on the inside, like a inner glove or something?
There it is, right there.
There's
the whole thing, rubber bladder inside.
Yeah.
And you can see where the ring attaches down underneath. Now the thing is, they have these on display in the museum. These are so-called Neil's official gloves, but Neil's gloves were left on the LEM, and it so-called went back and crashed on the lunar surface. They took them off to save weight.
They don't even look dirty, do they? Really, the moon dust or anything.
Well, they would have to be reproductions. They couldn't
Yeah.
be the originals because he so-called didn't bring them back.
Yeah.
You see it? There's Neil Armstrong. There's the actual.
Made in Taiwan. Oh,
Yeah, March 1969.
Well, April 1969.
Yeah, April 1969.
Yeah.
And there.
And ILC, International Latex Corporation.
Yep.
Industries, that's same people who make bras. So used to it. But it's...
Yeah. There's the contract numbers right there on it. Serial number is 073. So they made at least 73 of them for him.
Marcus, look at those gloves. Would you be able to operate a Hasselblad camera wearing those gloves?
No.
There's a close-up. There's a close-up of those fingertips.
Yeah. Because you couldn't feel where the shutter was.
Yeah.
Because on the Hasselblad that they allegedly used on the moon, the shutter is on the front of a Hasselblad. They made a big 1-inch square shutter button, which is fair enough, but you still got to feel where your finger is, and you only use one finger to press the shutter.
Mm-hmm. So there's their instructions. These are the detailed instructions on how to do everything on the lunar surface while they were there.
If you want to, Scott, you can zoom into the chat, and I've got some Hasselblad camera shots so people can actually see what we're talking about. And I would like to know how those gloves can operate that camera.
Also, the writing on those sleeves look incredibly small if you're in a spacesuit as well, trying to look through a helmet in the glare of the sun.
Yeah.
Right, on the front of the Hasselblad, you see the big square shutter button, which is on the lens. That's
right there.
That's what you've got to find and press to take a photograph. The film is wound on automatically. It's the only automatic feature on the camera. That button on the right-hand side is for changing the lens. You press it in and it releases the lens. And on top of the lens, you'll see the little paddles on the right-hand side, on the left here. That's what was put on by Hasselblad to enable somebody wearing gloves to use the lens. But you can't see these indicators from inside your helmet. The first one is the aperture, the second one is the shutter speed, and the back one here is the focusing. But if you can't see it, how do you know you've got it correctly focused? Well, you don't, which is why I say that. And anyway, the film wouldn't have worked because it would have been destroyed in the vacuum. So what you've got here is a very good, as I've said before, it's a brilliantly executed propaganda exercise.
Well, these cameras aren't accurate because they don't have the trigger on them.
Sorry?
The trigger grip isn't on these.
Oh, that's right. Pistol grip.
Yeah, the pistol grip is not there.
Which mounts under the camera and under here. And that's visible on the Apollo 12 photographs of Al Bean. You can see his pistol grip. Now, quite why they put a pistol grip on.
This one's a different camera as well because it says 70 total exposures, right? And they were shooting 150, right?
Right.
Yeah. On the Hasselblad, which has got the magazine on the back, you can see on the back here. That's the magazine. That holds 150 black and white exposures. I think it's 120 color, because color film is obviously slightly thicker, because it's got more than one emulsion layer. The black and white film's only got the one emulsion layer. So it can fit into this magazine, which is about the size of the camera body itself.
Yeah.
The average...
It's funny that this one says 70,
that's 70 millimeter. That's the size of the film. That's the diagonal across the frame. 70 millimeters. Same as 35 millimeters is the diagonal across the frame of the film itself. So 70 would refer to the size of the film, same as an IMAX film, 70mm.
Right, but this particular one says 70 total exposures.
Where does it say it?
Right there.
Well, I can't see it.
In the middle, Mark, the
Right
red
there.
writing.
Sorry?
Right there.
Just to the right of the two circular indicators. It's in red. It almost looks like LED, but it's just written in red. Below the big label.
Can you see where the mouse cursor is, Marcus?
Not yet, no. I don't know if we're looking at the same picture.
Okay, maybe not receiving Scott's feed or something. But yeah, it does say 70 total exposures, so it must be, that's a standard kind of Hasselblad for non-NASA users, I guess, for professional photographers, I'd imagine.
Yes,
Imagine
if
on
you,
Earth. Sorry,
because
Marcus.
most 70mm film, or 120, which is what it used to be called, 120 film, 120mm, that had a paper backing in it. So if you take the paper backing away, you can get in double the number of film, double exposure. That's probably what it means by 70.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, when they're putting photographs up of stuff and claiming them that they're associated with Apollo or they're part of Apollo, right? There's so much stuff that just isn't anymore.
I can imagine on Earth that wouldn't be a bad camera to use because the thing is, if you're going to take a photograph, you've got to be able to hear the shutter click for a start. And as Marcus explained, when you're in your spacesuit, if you've got it attached to the chest bracket, which a lot of the astronauts did most of the time because they needed their hands free to manipulate things as best they could with those gloves, you wouldn't actually be able to see what you were doing. You wouldn't be able to feel what you were doing because you can't feel anything with those gloves, which I've never actually tried them on myself. Andy, of course, did. But of course, if they're pressurized, they're going to be even stiffer and more and less malleable than they would be if they weren't pressurized. And you wouldn't be able to hear the shutter click. You wouldn't be able to see what your hands were doing. You wouldn't even know if you'd taken a photograph or not. You wouldn't be able to hear the clicking as it wound on. You wouldn't be able to do anything. You wouldn't. Well, you could try, but you wouldn't know you'd taken the photographs until you got back to Earth and they said, "Oh dear, sorry, these didn't work, so you didn't take any photos." That'd be a bit embarrassing, wouldn't it? You'd have to go back to the moon and take some more.
Maybe that's why they had to have so many missions, because they had to go and get all the photographs done correctly. Sent them all back. It's like Stanley Kubrick. You only shoot on location to get it right.
It does seem that it has actually got a pistol grip on this photo anyway. Again, in chat, the chest-mounted one on the bracket does appear to have a pistol grip.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah, that's right.
But like I said, they have so many versions of them. The problem that NASA has with it is they've had equipment on display for the last 50 years. And here's a prime example. Here's the boot, the inner liner boot that is supposed to seal. And now take a look at these zippers. They don't seal anything.
So it wasn't like obviously
but they're on display.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is the suits that they had to modify to make a lightweight suit to practice in is the actual suit that they put on display. Okay. Now they have versions. They have versions of the PLSS, right, with all the equipment inside of it. Okay, that PLSS weighs 140 pounds. Okay, the suit weighs another 40 pounds on top of that for a total of 180 pounds. You couldn't possibly practice on Earth with it, so they made very, very lightweight suits. Except those are the suits they did they faked the moon landing with. And that's the same suit that they put on display. Okay. And you're looking at, here's an example of it. Just, it doesn't seal. You're not going anywhere if these boots don't seal.
Is that zip?
Right there. The stitch work, they claim they had the best people doing the stitch work. I don't see any quality stitch work here.
What good is a zip? And actually, is that actually meant to be a vacuum seal, that zip? Because I mean, obviously the gloves have like a cuff.
This is the inner liner boot.
You can't see zips. Even rainwater goes through a zip. Zips can't. Zip is just like a thing which clasps together. At least there's loads of holes in it. I mean, at least the gloves had some kind of the seal on the cuff, But zips go. You can't How do you make a zip that works to keep a vacuum?
How do they do it for spacewalks then? I mean, how do they seal it for spacewalks? What zip system?
That's a whole different rig if you're talking about Columbia or the space shuttle and stuff like that, right? But
Yeah.
when you're looking at this is the equipment that is on display.
I know, but I'm asking, like, if the astronauts that go on the ISS and do their external spacewalks, do we know how those are actually sealed? What the process is?
They're using a hard shell upper body to start with on those.
They're completely revamped suits, aren't they?
It's a completely different suit. Take a look at this. You see, does that look sealed? That strap is when they were so-called, that piece of comes in and there has a harness inside and the steel ring comes out, and that's where they put the tether straps on because they were standing up while they were landing. That's to hold them in place. It goes right through the suit.
Oh, it's not just the outer suit. It goes
and that ring goes right through the suit, and it's not sealed.
It goes. The ring actually passes through
This is on display. They never thought that anybody would look at it. It's on display. And when you look at these, okay, see, that's just like a door latch. Okay, they don't compress. The pressure is on the inside of the suit pushing out, so it's pushing away from this is a rubber seal, which wouldn't work either. You need to have metal, but the helmet would be pushing out against these clips if it was pressurized inside. These were designed on a practice suit so you could quickly take the helmet on and off, take the gloves on and off very, very quickly. Right? The practice suit also has a P-flap on the front of it. Right there. Because you're not going to jump out of the suit when you're practicing.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
you can see how far these rings come in. Okay? That they if they really worked on them, they could get them up there to work on the thing. But they never had them connected all the time. They'd be taking them off, first of all, to handle stuff, and second, to cool themselves down. This particular suit, this Armstrong suit, okay? This is the lightweight version that they created so they could practice with. This is not a functioning suit.
Oh my God. So that's what's on display.
But it's been on display.
Yeah, and it's going to cost $500,000 to renovate it, apparently.
Oh, it's even more than that. They did Cernan's suit as well. Cernan's suit is apparently, after he died, they found the abrasion cover from the PLSS in his closet, and they've taken it back, and it's going to be put up on display. Well, the problem is in the photographs, before they leave, the abrasion suit, the PLSs are sitting there with the abrasion covers on them. Okay. And I can actually pull that up.
Yeah, because all astronauts took their suits off, chucked them out the door before they took off.
They chucked them out, yeah. So to do that, to keep the door open, they had to go on to an umbilical.
That's right.
Otherwise, there's obviously a lunar
Now
laundromat
they can't
out
go
there.
back out onto the ground.
Well, they chucked them out of the LEM or out of the command module when they got back, and just left it in the LEM ascent stage.
No, it was chucked out of the lunar lander
onto the moon surface.
From the surface.
How do you do that? Because you'd have to take the suit off, and then once you chuck it out of, open the door.
No, you don't take the suit off. Just the
this things.
Just the backpack. Your PLSS.
But
okay,
then you'd have to. If you don't have
here are the shots before they take off. Right here. These are the shots. They cannot go back outside. Both PLSs, you can see them here. Both the PLSs are on the ground. Okay, except now NASA claims that this abrasion cover right here, and I'm going to show you this abrasion cover, and then we're going to have a little closer look at it. This is the abrasion cover that they claim that Conrad or Cernan, okay, that they found it in his closet, that he had brought it back with him. Now he is on an umbilical cord because this thing's on the ground.
Oh, I see the umbilical, yeah. So.
Okay, so he's in the LEM on an umbilical cord. He can't go back out and get this thing to bring it back with him. Yet they claim that it was brought back. Now, if you take a little closer look at this thing, you can see that they didn't even bother to give them brand new bloody practice suits. This thing is worn right through, right there. There's a hole right through the abrasion cover, completely worn out from riding around on the rover.
Oh dear.
Could that be Schmidt's thing?
It wouldn't matter which one it is. Both of them are on the ground.
Oh, I see.
Okay? Both of them are in the LEM. Both of them are on umbilicals, and both of these things are on the ground. Okay? Nobody's going back out to get them. And
So
yet they claim that one was brought back.
So yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, it seems an odd thing to do anyway.
Shots. There's the two of them are in these two shots here.
Okay.
Okay. There's one tucked in right under there beside the shadow. And you see it in this one. That's it down there on that side. And this is the other one here. Just a small shot of it there. Sorry, that's the same one. But the two of them are in the photographs here if I pull them all up.
In fact, NASA were very keen to tell us that after they chucked their PLSS packs out, the seismometer or the earthquake detector recorded it. So they were very
exactly,
which of course indicates that they were on the moon to chuck them out. Yet another of those false or fake news information.
Okay. Now another thing to show that they were simply doing a mock-up, and this is one of the most famous photographs, okay, of them coming out on a thing, and there's all kinds of lighting anomalies and everything else, because like if they're even saying it's reflecting from the ground, right? This egress platform here that's coming out is covering all of that, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to just zoom right in on Mr. Buzz Aldrin here. And I want you to take a look at the suit. The PLS is touching the top edge of the door. You can see it's touching the door. You can see the angle that he's sitting in. You can see the position and the angle that he's actually sitting in. And if you recall, Buzz saying, we better not close this door because there's no handle on it. Well, that's because it's a mock-up. Okay. Now we're going to have a little look at the inside of this thing. And this is going to show you right away that this was just a cheap little rendition. This console right here, there's the door. He cannot be in that position right there. That's 14 inches in. The entire console is there. Okay? That means that this is just simply a shell, because he cannot be sitting up in that position. That's halfway. That's halfway down the PLSS, sticking straight up. There's only an inch between the top of that door and this console sticking out that far.
Yeah, it sort of hangs over.
None of this is inside this machine here. Just a mock-up. It can't be there. He can't be in this position right here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because you can measure the average individual from their knees up to about halfway up their back, and it would be greater than the distance, because that door measures 32 inches square. And,
right.
And there is no way you could kneel like that. Presumably that's what he's doing, kneeling. You can see his heel. The average length of a human from their knee to their hip is about 2 feet. So you've got another 2 feet, another foot of PLSS above that. And it doesn't look as if he's particularly uncomfortable there, because
No, it can't be touching the door there and have the backpack go up. The PLS can't go up into here. If this equipment was here,
yeah,
it wouldn't be. So if this equipment is missing, they can't fly this thing. The
Well,
mock-up.
and they
Simple
certainly couldn't have landed it either, because Armstrong did it manually, we're told, using all those dials and knobs with his spacesuit on.
That's right.
Gets
And
it.
that's why the mock-up, they forgot to put a door handle on it. Okay. Probably to give more space, there wouldn't be anything inside of this shell.
No.
If that console isn't there, there wouldn't be anything inside of the shell for them. Okay. They'd be right. And you see it when you pull back a little bit, you can just see that angle even clearer, that there's no way it's coming up against that.
No.
I mean, it's easy enough for them to joke about there not being a handle, but I mean, seriously, if for some reason that door got shut, you wouldn't be able to get back into the LEM, and that would be the end of them.
No, you can just get picked up, or they pull up with your Corvette, you drive back to the hotel.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. On the moon, you'd at least these simple things are just having a handle on the outside, just so you could open that door. And you'd have to be careful not to do any damage to the seal around the frame of the door, because if there's any dents or something, that could.
There's another shot of it. There's another shot of it there.
Yeah.
In there, and then on the other side of that, you have all of this equipment here, and I don't think any of that would be there either on the other half. They wouldn't bother to put this housing in for the engine, because they wouldn't. Why would you put the engine in this thing?
Yeah.
Right. They needed to have all that room just to get around to do the mock-up on it. But this shows you that this is just a model, that it's just a mock-up, that it's not real. Okay. Just as clear as that.
Yeah.
They probably didn't know they were exposing it to that level when they were taking these shots.
And
probably they didn't. And of course, I always have to show off the fact that we got to have this wet flag in here. I mean, if you're, running around, you've seen the equipment, you've seen it just aging and bleached in the sun, molded. You've seen everything else because it was just shot outside. And here's a soaking wet flag for being outside. And I don't know how anybody can argue that. I've seen people try and argue this flag. They just look foolish when they do it. They can go ahead all they want. If they want to discuss it further, show it to your friends. Show it to all of your friends. Get out there, make your own video, and pull that photograph up and show it to everybody. I want everybody to see that photograph on it. And if all else fails, just have a cigarette.
I like that one.
Okay, Mark. By the way, this is the clips come from the Apollo 12 Uncensored, and this is the director on it. I think I got that off of Crave. It's a 57-minute video, and it's the last 10 minutes. There's a lot of stuff that's being revealed while they were interviewing the Apollo 12 astronauts as well in it. But that's a serious part. But that little clip at the end showing the stuff with these guys messing around, it's in the cue cards, and we gotta have this one to show you that this is Alan Bean's little cartoon, and this is coming from that video clip. The clip was supposed to be taken by the backup crew. We're making this video clip while the astronauts were on the moon. And that's not possible because the cartoon that's sitting there is on the cue cards at the same time this so-called was being made. And that just shows you the attitude Okay, that's Francis Northcutt right there, and that is Richard Gordon sitting right there, and you can't miss Richard because he's got one of the hairiest arms on the planet. Okay, when you're watching the video clip, and this young lady was part of the computer team that helped them with the simulations and everywhere else. So her nickname was Poppy. But
she personally come up to sort out the 1202 alarm.
Yeah, Frances Northcutt on it, and you can Google her. She's still alive. I think she's 85 or 6 now. She's still alive, but she was part of the team that worked with doing the simulations and everything else. And you can see her. She's the only woman that's on the control panel for the Apollo missions. If you see any video clips of her on there, and I can pull a picture right there of her up so you can see her when she's at her control desk there. There are interviews online. You can Google it where she's discussing the work that she was doing for NASA.
So, Scott, what you've just shown us, is that some kind of drill? Was it some kind of rehearsal for the actual landing, allegedly, for the landing?
They were actually put this on for fun, this little 10-minute video on the thing, and they claimed it was the backup crew, and it was happening at the same time the astronauts were so-called on the moon.
Right, so they just
at the same time.
So they got all these costumes out, and they put all.
This is the first color camera. They were messing with it. Okay, they drop it on the ground, and in Apollo 12, the color camera failed, but they obviously destroyed it doing something, and they were just destroying it even further in that video clip. Right? He's holding a grapefruit here, just for fun. Right? And you'll see that in the cue cards. They're holding it up and saying, I bet you that. This is how they treated the equipment that they were working with, completely smashing the helmet, cracking it like that. And if you look carefully in Apollo 17, you'll find that the helmet's cracked. Right?
Oh, so it's the same. It's the same helmet.
These are just clips from the video coming out. You can see they're not wearing an inner bubble helmet. Okay, that's pretty much what they were doing. I don't think they could keep these astronauts very serious at all on what they were doing. There's the clip that I pulled up the two of them from at her desk and on the thing. So
it's interesting. So basically, what was supposedly them horsing around and having fun. I must say, it's quite an elaborate pageant just to have fun. I mean, they've obviously got costumes, and they got Poppy to put a bikini on and things like that, and they got all the equipment.
And then they had to settle down and do an hour of stuff that they could use.
Yeah, so this is actually
surface, right. This is what I'm saying. Is that they're doing that, and then they're coming back, and they're having to there. I just quit sharing the screen there.
Thanks, Scott. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very good. Thanks, Scott.
I was interested to see why it showed a space shuttle on the cover of that Apollo 12 movie. Why did they allude to the space shuttle in any way or form? You would have thought they would have had a Saturn V or something on the front cover. Seems a bit strange.
That's rather strange. I saw that when they pulled it up, but like I said, you're a couple generations away, and the people that are now producing it don't have the history of the knowledge, and they just grab whatever they want, right, to put it together. They interviewed the astronauts. They're not really. They might be fans, but they're not dedicated fans.
Right, they're not clued up on the
director doing that is doing it to make some money, put it together. He's pretty good at putting on a pretty good show. NASA, obviously, here's the problem. NASA, Okay, somebody at NASA, director comes to him and says, I need some footage. And they gave him this footage. I've never seen it before. And he puts it on the end of there and makes up whatever, right? But that's actually what was happening. Try and settle these guys down. Get them out of their Corvettes, right? Get them away from having fun with Poppy. And I'm sure she was a very fun girl. Okay? These guys were isolated for up to a year and a half away from their families for that length of time. Okay,
Well,
famous.
So
They were household names. I mean, not everybody in the world knew who Elizabeth Taylor was, but they sure as hell knew who Neil Armstrong was. Right? And whatever he wanted, he'd say, hey, let's get the Playboy bunnies over here. Or let's take a T-38 and we'll just drop in on drop in on Hafner, right? Oh, by the way, GM, you got those, Astro Corvettes for us? How many you got? Right? Those beautiful machines that they're running around in. And they use that footage that they're using them in. They actually did the, from Thunderball. Sean Connery, Thunderball, when he does the car chase in the Mustang and he puts it up on two wheels and then he goes around the parking lot. Mm-hmm. In that video, they're reproducing that car chase.
Okay. It's worth a watch then.
If you watch carefully, Dick Gordon is wearing that monkey mask the whole time while he's driving the car.
Sounds like Planet of the Apes.
But the thing that you have to realize is they are in spacesuits.
Well, they're supposed to have been
driving their car. They're jumping through stuff. They're running through buildings. They're out on that set running around. That is not a real spacesuit.
Yeah.
Okay. It's modified for them to practice with. It had to be super lightweight. They can't be running around in a 180-pound suit. Okay. So to practice with, that's the suit that they were wearing. It didn't need an inner bubble helmet so you could lift it and have a cigarette. Okay. You didn't need all of that stuff. But that's the suit that's on display.
Yeah.
Okay. Like some of they got the PLSs and they got the cutaways and stuff like that, right? But the suit, Neil Armstrong's suit, Buzz Aldrin's suit, okay, Cernan's suit that they're preparing again, each of them costing millions of dollars to clean them up, right? Those are their practice suits only.
And that's what they were wearing.
The way they connect would not seal anything. You can see that the zippers in the boots. You can see the way the gloves connect. You can see the way the helmet connects on them. Okay. They don't have that inner blue liner in any of those suits, but they put them on display when they got back. And 50 years later, somebody says, hey, wait a minute. Those can't protect anything, right? You can go online and Google and get X-ray images of the spacesuits, right? And if you can take an X-ray, they weren't protecting you for anything.
And that was in the actual photographs taken during Apollo 12, apparently. It was those suits that the astronauts are seen wearing, not real spacesuits. Is that right?
Even for the space shuttle, you can go online and see the X-ray that's showing you the hardware that's inside the suit, but you can see right through it with a common X-ray. Well, guess what gamma rays are going to do you? Right there.
Now, Mark, it's interesting. Something that I know it's slightly an aside here, but Marcus, I think you noticed something very interesting about the reflection in the visors. You were saying earlier,
yes,
when we were off air.
When Scott showed the picture of the bubble helmet, the plastic covering on Earth, and you see a reflection of the sun. And it's really quite small, about half an inch in diameter, let's say. If you look at a similar reflection of the sun in a helmet on the moon, allegedly, it's about 3 or 4 times as big.
They're big round orbs.
Yes, because that indicates it's not light. Because you can't get a small light to reflect and produce the amount of light that is in that picture.
The charade that they were doing in the last 10 minutes, which you described, Scott, were clearly done in daylight on Earth, and you get that effect that Marcus notices. Yet the actual photographs of Apollo 12, supposedly on the moon, are done, could look like they've been done at nighttime under like a spotlight.
Oh, absolutely. 11, 12, and part of 14 definitely were shot at night. By the time they got to the rovers and they needed more space to run around in, okay, they're using a filter to make the sky look black. And I've talked to some people that know how to put a filter on it, and the filters were available. Very simple, non-intrusive filter will take a blue sky and make it look absolutely black for you.
Well, they use those in the movies. So, I've seen films that were there's nighttime scenes in some classic movies that are actually shot in daytime, and then they just made it look like it was nighttime by using this film.
Yeah. But that's why when you get to Apollo 15, 16, and 17, they're actually shooting outdoors. And in Apollo 17, the shadows are very, very long. And then there's an entire magazine where the sun's almost vertical.
Well, that can't be possible.
That just can't happen. Okay?
No, because
over 3 days, is less than basically 3 hours of lighting change.
Right? Exactly.
It's interesting. If you look at the photograph behind Andy of the Apollo 15 lander, isn't it strange how when you don't need to see it, there's no detail in the shadow area?
Mm-hmm.
But the ground illuminated by whether it's a light or the sun, probably a sun, is not overexposed. But if you look at Apollo 11 for the same thing, you'll see lots and lots of detail in that area of the lander. But
that's the Apollo 16. I'm just looking at that now. That's Apollo 16, just after the jump salute. That is the rover that was put out there with the double rib in the fender.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying, just from my quick look at that little view, I know exactly what photograph that is. Yeah.
All right. But
I've been looking at them so long. I know the difference. Apollo 15 does not have the mountains behind it either.
And also because you've got the astronaut doing his jump salute, you'd think he'd illuminate that shadow side of the lander, but he doesn't. Well, it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean the big shadow you see on the shadow side of the LEM, you'd expect that's what the Apollo 11 pictures of Aldrin coming out would look like. Should look like.
You see what just happened? He walked. He got out of his chair, and the illumination is still there.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I think
Andy,
you've done that in Photoshop.
You're going to sit right back in the same spot to feel that glow around you.
I may have added the glow.
Yeah.
It's still glowing, even when you
purple glow.
It's ready, Breck.
Yeah.
It's your astral photograph there.
It is. It's my aura.
Brilliant photography.
Now, what I found interesting is this. There are a couple of photographs. I mean, this is where you actually can see the astronauts' faces, which means they've removed the sunshade on their helmet visor, which it means that basically they were exposing their eyes to the sunlight, which doesn't, without an atmosphere, which is actually very, very dangerous. It could actually damage their eyesight very badly because ultraviolet rays are not filtered out, and they can actually cause cataracts in the eyes. So that was.
They were in shape.
But you definitely see these photographs, Scott, don't you? You were showing some before we went on air, and you can actually see the faces of the astronauts in their suits, which a real astronaut on the moon wouldn't do that.
It's more than just that their visors up. There's no inner bubble helmet. Okay. There's no pressurization. They just lifted it up. They needed to get some air.
All right. Yeah, they wouldn't
have a cigarette.
Yeah, they wouldn't. I mean, it'd be great if there actually was a lunar photo of one of the astronauts smoking. That'd be great if that managed. But the cracked helmet is another thing that they would never go out on the moon with a cracked visor, because if that breaks, then the suit will depressurize and they'd be killed.
With the amount of pressure that it's dealing with, if there's even a tiny defect in the material, it would just blow out.
Yeah, you said on your previous time you were on here that just a grain of dust or grain of sand or whatever the particles on the lunar surface, if just one or two of those actually got stuck on the door seal, that'll be enough to allow the LEM sensors to pressurize before they got back to the command module.
Many things that would happen when they were trying to repressurize the craft, if they were actually doing it for real. One would be the dirt, because they'd have to be whistle clean. Second of all, they have to be one-time use only seals, so they would have to replace the seal before they close the door again.
Yeah, and if they can't repressurize the LEM, they can't get off the moon, because even if they launched with the LEM ascent stage with a depressurized cabin, they couldn't connect to the command module and get from there, because they'd have to repressurize the cabin in order to get into the command module.
And then you have the deformation of the skin. Very light skin is going to deform, stretch, and shrink with the heat of the sun, the hot and cold. Let's say you get the door shut, you put a brand new seal in it, you manage to get the door shut. Now you're going to repressurize it. Okay? And as soon as you start putting a compressed gas in there and releasing it and expanding it, it's just like a refrigerator. It's going to get to be about -80 in there, and the entire craft is going to shrink and move and crack and lose the seal again.
That's very important, isn't it? Because if you repressurize something, that's an important point. The cold. You know that if you let your car tire, if you have a car tire, you charge it up. If it warms up because you're compressing all that heat with all the gas, and when you let it out, it cools down.
Give it a little squirt and see how long you can hang out of the can.
Exactly. The cylinder that was containing the pressurized air would have warmed up while you were filling it, but once it was pressurized, it would cool down. And then when you release it, the opposite happens. It becomes very, very cold. And you'd be filling the LEM with, it would freeze the astronauts. They'd be really cold, wouldn't they? They'd be like, they
wouldn't be able to get out of their suits for a long time. They wouldn't be able to have lunch. They wouldn't be able to go to sleep.
Unless they had like fur warm jackets like polar explorers wear or something like that, which would
they wouldn't get out of their suit.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's an interesting point as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, how many, because obviously this is in a museum. This is in the Science Museum in London. And I think there's some of them in the United States as well. You mentioned the Smithsonian.
Lots of reproductions.
Yeah. So how millions and millions of people walk through there and they look at these suits and they say, well, these are, well, obviously they're not the originals, but they are the moon suits that were designed for the astronauts. How many of them apart from yourself, Scott, how many people do you know of that have looked at that and thought, nah?
Not many, because when you're in a facility like that, you're just overcome with the immensity of the equipment that they were dealing with.
I mean, that's what I mean.
You walk by a Saturn V rocket, which really took off from the ground, okay, and would shake the boots out of you when you're 10 miles away from it, right? You have to understand that thing was a real machine that took off and weighed that much. It might not have gotten anywhere. It might have gone 50 miles or 100 miles out before it landed in the ocean, but that was the big show, right? And when you see that equipment sitting there, and you see the buildings and the size of the buildings and the size of the cranes that they used and everything else to handle it, and all the dollies, that big giant thing that they dragged it out onto the launch pad with, it took a whole day to get there, right? Mm-hmm. That stuff is all real. Okay.
It's very impressive.
So it's just so overwhelming that you can't believe that they didn't go.
I remember being a small child.
It was overwhelming for me to see it. It's overwhelming for anybody else to see it. And that's why, and the amount, it's not that, it's the number of people and the time and the money and the years that were put into it. It's so hard to believe that it didn't happen. But when you start out with a little tiny lie, and you need to maintain that little tiny lie, you have to lie about everything else around it, and the lie gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So what are they doing? They just continue to lie about going here, going there, Mars, whatever, right? They just keep lying. They won't stop.
I remember being a child going to the Science Museum in London and seeing, I didn't see the suits, but I saw a replica of the LEM, and on the very realistic set, which looked very much like the moon, which could have been used for filming. I mean, it was that good. They had the rocks and the dust and everything. And the suits, there was a mannequin wearing a suit on the moon. But I was impressed by it, and I was just a child. But I mean, maybe it's a testimony to the power of the media and the power of groupthink. That millions of people have walked through this museum, including trained engineers and people who have worked on the space program and have seen this and not asked this obvious question. I mean, maybe it's a kind of Milgram experiment thing.
They're doing it by subliminal imagery. NASA's got the money. You watch a cereal commercial, watch a car commercial, watch an insurance commercial, right? Doesn't matter. It's in sitcoms. It's everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Kids playing. Oh, here's a little thing like this. He's playing with his little rocket ship. He's got his little spacesuit on, right? Guy flying by in the background. It doesn't matter whether it's Red Bull or not, right?
NASA, like all government agencies, employs psychologists.
It's everywhere, and they're using it to convince you of that continuously, all the time.
And they're good at it. These psychologists are very good at that. There's entire organizations that specialize in what can we put out in the media and show people to make them believe what we want them to believe and think and feel the way we want them to think and feel. There's organizations that do that.
I think the CIA call it perception management, don't they?
Yeah, Edward Albanese called it the manufacturing of consent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was
and
the
then you
master
have the other
propaganda,
psychologists come out there and write articles and books to discredit you because they're little label makers. So it doesn't matter what your behavior is, they will give you a label. And I was reading one, and he created a new term for conspiracy theorists. So for some side of psychopaths or something like that. I can't even pronounce what he was putting out there. And I thought, this guy's a little label maker.
Exactly. They have buzzwords.
And I've got to come up with a term that creates a psychiatrist into a label maker.
Yeah, moon landing deniers is one.
Yeah, because we're just nuts. We're right out there. We don't know how to think. We're sucked into everything. We're so gullible, right?
And only in it for the money. Don't forget that.
Of course.
And always in it for the money. And the guys writing it, you can see them on Amazon, the psychiatrists that write documents about how nuts we are. And to just prove how nuts we are, they take somebody that claims something about the moon, they will attach us to another more ridiculous
like the flat Earth
conspiracy.
Yep, exactly. I mean,
and the latest one has always been flat Earth.
Yeah, this is a point that Jarrah made in his article.
I mean,
the purpose of it all.
It's an interesting topic for those who believe it, and for the rest of us, we can sit back and laugh.
Yeah, this morning, which is a major mainstream TV production here, actually did cover this on the 50th anniversary. Well, Marcus and I were doing the proper job. Yeah. This morning they had on a mainstream scientist to defend the Apollo missions, but the person they had on, I was waiting to put Marcus on there, or Mary Bennett, or David Percy, or someone like that, or yourself, Scott, or Andy, or even me, or Neil, or someone like that. But instead, they brought on Martin Kenny, who is he's one of the leaders of the British Flat Earth movement. And he said, "Oh, so yeah,
it's a standard way of associating a strange and ridiculous idea with an idea that they don't want to be discussed."
And if they
flat Earth is such an easily debunked idea that it doesn't really warrant very much attention to it. But because the moon landings has got some really good, powerful information behind it, or the faking of it has got such good information behind it, they've got to associate that idea with something completely ridiculous. So, as you say, why was this guy, Martin Kenny, invited on to this morning when he had no expertise whatsoever about Apollo? He said he didn't pretend to have any information.
I hadn't even heard of this guy. I mean, I know everyone in this business personally. I mean, I've been doing it for so long. and I'd never even heard of this guy. I had to Google him afterwards. But you know, the moment he started talking about how the moon and sun were luminaries, and the moment he said that, a red flag went, a big flat red flag went up. And I thought,
should we create our own conspiracy? You know, flat moon.
Well, they actually do believe that in the flat Earth. They actually think that it's a flat disk. Because I've actually been talking online to some guy. I think he's from Truth Seekers Northeast. Actually, he's part of that group. You know, and, you know, I may have met him actually when I've done talks up there. But he wants me to watch this flat Earth movie, and I haven't actually got around to watching it. But I promised I will. And I just sort of said a few basic questions. You know, have you ever owned a telescope? You know, have you looked through a telescope at other planetary bodies like the moon, for instance, being the closest one around,
I know who this is.
and other planets? And he said, well, I used to go to an astronomy club, and yet he believes in flat Earth. And I'm thinking, how did he get on at the astronomy club if he's a flat earther? I thought that was a bit of an interesting one. So he then sent me a link to look at all stars. All stars are these weird, blurry things, and they're not like, you know, suns millions of light years away or whatever. They were like little pulsating, flickering, weird shapes. And I said, well, the thing is, you're going to get that when you look through a telescope. I think this was taken on a Canon Coolpix camera, which is not the best thing for astronomy, really. But, you know, it was taken on there, this video. And I said, the thing is, you're going to get atmospheric distortion when you're looking through a camera up at the stars, which are millions of light years away. And he said, what's atmospheric distortion? And yet this guy goes to an astronomy club. You would have thought he would have learnt about the distortion of the atmosphere and things. And I had to try and explain
maybe
it.
His camera had a NASA sticker on it.
I would never try and video the stars using a Canon Coolpix thing, which is, you know, just for doing snaps in the garden or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, I've got a presentation I can show you guys.
I just need to take a.
But before you start, I put in the chat the link. I put in that little 10-minute video, so everybody can download it from there and have a look at it.
I'll edit it in.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Could I just want to take a break
now?
Go for it.
Man's second landing on the moon. For on the moon, the United States astronaut is on his own. There is no one to get him out of trouble. He is his own man, no mere puppet of the scientific community. He is an individual with no strings attached. But it is in these endless simulations that the skills are learned, skills that may one day mean life or death on the moon. And while Pete Conrad trained with great dexterity, Dick Gordon and Al Bean also felt the intensive heat of training, including emergency slide wire egress at the Cape. Now, on November 14th, 1969, 3 heroes struck out for the launch pad. Pete Conrad, Al Bean, Dick Gordon. Hours of rehearsals and simulations had gone into making the countdown the precise operation it had become. Every second was critical. And there was no doubt that, barring some unforeseen disaster, the bird would leave the pad on the precise predicted second.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control. We've just passed the 49-minute mark in our countdown. We're now T-minus 48 minutes and 53 seconds and counting. The count is going well, but the weather appears to be deteriorating. However, we are still counting. 47 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. The Apollo 12 spacecraft and that Saturn V launch vehicle at Pad A all still going well at this time. Pete Conrad has completed his guidance and control checks in the spacecraft. Program and this baby is really going.
With a precision that exemplified the entire mission, the three adventurers of Apollo 12 lifted off.
Fuel cell lights and AC bus light. Fuel cell disconnect. AC bus overload 1 and 2. Main bus A and B out. Hello, Houston. Yankee Clipper with Intrepid in tow has arrived on time. I guess like everybody else that just arrived, all three of us are plastered. Shame on you.
Now it was time for landing. On Earth, scientists waited with great anxiety for this landing of the first truly scientific mission to the moon.
Hey, cloud speed coming down at 30. Looks good out there, Dave. Looks good. 30.
On board the lunar module, there was an atmosphere of grim determination, plus oxygen and a few trace elements. Conrad was determined to land at the site called Pete's Parking Lot. In switching to an alternate landing site, Conrad showed an aptitude for real-time decision-making that exemplified the entire mission.
Looking good. 50 feet coming down. Watch for the dust. He's got it made. Contact light.
It was touchdown on the moon.
I did it. Set it down. Set it down and it didn't fall over. I can't believe it. It's a nice place to land. I sure couldn't see what was underneath us once I got into that dust.
With the lunar module down safely, Dick Gordon began his lonely vigil. 60 miles above the moon, 250,000 miles from home. An unsung hero, he whiled away the lonely hours while his buddies on the moon got the glory. And what would he get? A sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes with his spirit of self-sacrifice. A spirit that exemplified the entire mission. Thus did Dick Gordon become the first mole astronaut. But now it was time for the first EVA. Conrad descended to the moon.
You'll never believe it. That's what I see. We're a surveyor, huh? We're a surveyor, yes, sir. Hey, ask him. Hey, where are we? Don't think you're going to steam around here quite as fast as you thought you were. Now you really got to watch your step down here.
Now Conrad collected a contingency sample and began the first of a series of scientific descriptions that would astound the earthbound scientists. Bean left the LEM next and proceeded to set up the television camera.
Come on, little fella. Let me go over here further to the side. Still is the same, Al. Why don't you try shifting the scene? Okay, can you check and see if it reflects too much? And if it does, I'll have to go stick it in the shade. And then maybe shine past the limb. Of course, that makes it not too good either, but maybe it's the best we can do. Man, oh man, did that thing's a boy.
Now the two intrepid astronauts headed for the ALSEP site to deploy the experiments.
Come on, Al, we've wasted time.
Then they spotted something. One of the most fascinating discoveries of the mission.
Hey, there's another one of those mounds over there. Where? What do you suppose they are? I don't know, Houston. What they are, they're this sort of mound. Look like, don't take this the wrong way. It looks like a small volcano.
reassemble the ALSET. While Conrad set up the lunar atmosphere experiment called SIDE, Bean began stamping down the lunar soil to make a firm foundation for the seismometer. Conrad and Bean went out again. It was during this second traverse that they continued to astound the scientists with their pithy descriptions and superb terminology.
Oh boy. Hey Al, come on over here. I'm coming. Al, look at the bottom of that crater. There's some big fragments out here. It looks to me like stuff is melted in the bottom of it. You know what I feel like now? You ever see those pictures of giraffes running in slow motion? That's exactly what I feel like.
Now they set about in earnestness that exemplified the entire mission, to collect meaningful samples of the lunar topography.
Holy Christmas, what's this? Listen, hand me this scoop. Let me get some of those glass beads and stuff there. This stuff is really funny. It's relatively fresh stuff here. Yeah, you better believe it. Oh boy, I want that rock. Man, if I got the grapefruit rock of all grapefruit rocks. Well, look, I think this is Halo Crater right here, all right? If this is a 20 feet diameter. Is it right on the rim of the Surveyor Crater? I can't believe we're at the right place. I'm not sure we're at the right place here. Let me look at the top of this hill here. This is Surveyor Crater. Let me look at the chart. Yeah, I'm trying to find the right crater, Houston. Hey, P, I think it's that area right over there. Sure. Come on, man, always waste of time. I don't really think this is the right place. No, I'm going in about the right direction. No, that's not it either. Well, we stop here and look at the chart a little bit. We're close. How's that grab you?
So they wrapped up their expedition and headed back to the land.
I get dirt all over myself. This is what is known as dirt. Man, we are filthy. What have you got all over your boots?
Now they re-entered the lunar module and prepared for liftoff.
Yeah, okay, let's quit screwing with it.
It was time for Dick Gordon in the command module to prepare for docking and stow his equipment. So once more, the intrepid crew arrived back at Earth for re-entry with an accuracy and precision that exemplified the entire mission.
Now, can you find Earth? Where's Earth? Where is Earth?
Forecast hasn't changed since this morning, Pete. Still calling for good weather. 1,800-foot scattered variable broken, 10 miles. The wind is out of the east at 15. We've got 3-foot waves on top of 5-foot swells.
So they returned, the crew of a mission that established a pace and style for future missions to follow. And this was a fitting conclusion, a conclusion that exemplified the entire mission.
Now, that film was made courtesy of our backup crew, which was Dave Scott, Al Worden, and Jim Irwin. So they're the producers, directors, and the cast members.
And so it's time for us to move on now, because our esteemed producer and director, Neil Geddes-Ward, has his own presentation. So what would you like to talk to us about, Neil?
Well, one that I'm not esteemed.
Yes, you are.
I'll see if I can share the screen. There, can you see that?
Yes, there's a rock.
Okay, so this is from Apollo 15, AS 15851157 over wide shot, it says here. And they've lifted up a rock. Now, this may be typical of moon rocks if it happens, but I was just curious when I went in here to have a look. You can see this. I don't know what this is, this stuff here. It looks like a kind of a resin or liquid.
Welding rod.
What's that?
Welding rod.
Welding stuff, yeah?
You can see where it's stuck, right? The one at the top there where the welding rod stuck and it snapped off.
Right.
That's how they were trying to create that effect.
Right.
What is that object that appears to... It almost looks like it's embedded partly in the rock, as if the rock's made of clay or plasticine.
This is their NASA thing, their rock mover or whatever they call it. I don't know what.
Grabbing thing with prongs, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's their pronger. But it's like something there. As soon as they lifted this rock up, it's exposed this stuff, you see. You wouldn't normally see it. So that's that one.
Doesn't look like a rock to me.
Yeah, well, it is a rock.
It's like something softer.
But yeah.
Something softer, like mud. But you wouldn't get mud on
It's got
the
a
moon.
bunch of metal and stuff stuffed into it, right? They just poured a plaster over it, and then they shot. You can see the line where they put the shotcrete right across the top line there. How it's been blown onto it.
Okay, I'll get to the next image. Hopefully, one of my favorites, which I think you guys have seen before. Let's wait to show up. It's the Apollo Iron, as I call it, from Apollo 15. Now you have to kind of step back a little bit to see it, because I've done a screen grab because it's quite far away, and I'm trying to work out what the hell is that. A sort of a rock with looks like a handle.
It looks like a Slender Man on his side.
Yeah, I call it an iron because it resembles an iron, but I'm not saying it is an electric iron. But it's just a way of labeling the thing. But it's a weird one. That one.
Sports bag. It looks like, like a
sports bag.
Bag.
Golf bag, yeah, for the golf stuff on the moon.
Well, they did play golf, didn't they? Yeah.
You got two baseballs sitting in front of it. That one, you can even see the stripe, the stitching on it, on the right hand side of it there. That's a baseball, for sure.
Yeah.
I showed it to my son, and he said, "Oh, it's one of the laser reflectors," and I says, "No, it's not. It doesn't look anything like that." Now, this one's just for the laugh of it. I mean, we've talked about the Apollo simulation and whether the Apollo lunar module was real or not. So I actually found the model. There it is. Is
that on the moon?
R2D2.
Yeah, that's definitely on the moon. That's something they actually put there as some sort of experiment. I say definitely on the moon, definitely on the simulated moon, I guess. But it's like something out of the BBC visual effects department. It's quite cool. I thought just amusement factor. But yeah, it's something there for some experiment, allegedly. Now, similar to the iron thing we saw before, there was this other thing that had a kind of a handle on it. And again, I've shown this before. Just let it show up. Which is this one. So again, it's similar shape, but this time it's got a kind of curved thing going on there. Which, again, what sort of rock would that be?
I've seen irons with that kind of handle. If it isn't,
yeah.
I mean, if
it looks like a curling stone handle to me.
Yeah, something sort of you do in yeah, it's really strange, isn't it? So I mean, most of the rocks look pretty good, but now and again you come across those weird ones. Now this is Apollo 16, what I call the round drum rock, and it's near another couple of rocks. Let's see if we can locate this. Yeah, so this one, it almost looks like an oil drum. It's got a circular top to it, goes down behind some other rocks. It almost looks like an oil drum or some spherical container. There's this one that's very angular, almost like a huge brick, and then it's laying against another kind of rock. Could be a similar sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's other bits and pieces over here, but what concerned me was this one, which looks very round and drum-like. Don't know what it is exactly, but
crashed spaceship.
It could be, yeah, one of their boosters from Apollo 16. That was. Now,
well, when they were bulldozing it, they just didn't get it all the way over the cliff.
Yeah.
like I said, they're in a scrap metal yard. You have to realize at the end of the Second World War, all of the manufacturers' buildings that were modified to produce equipment for the Second World War, at the end of that, they very quickly just had to get rid of that stuff, right? And then redo the plant again back to what it originally was, or to make something else new, right? If it was an automotive plant, right, they got rid of all the equipment. So you have all the equipment that was there, all the machines that they needed, right? They'd just be thrown out and brand new stuff would be put in, right? They didn't recycle metals at the time. They just simply buried them. They just pushed them out, buried them. And Flagstaff is famous for that. I mean, that dump's been there forever, and it's still in operation today.
Wow. Now, this is one that I sent out to you guys, and Scott came back with an interesting thing. Now, I saw this on an Apollo 17 photograph, and you can see, now, we think it's photoshopped because you got this repeat rock thing here. So you got this with three little shadows. You got this rock here, repeats with this rock. That shaped rock repeats with that rock. Anyone familiar with Photoshop can see that there's been a cloning type of tool applied to that. So Scott very kindly went ahead and found possibly the original picture. What I'm concerned is why bother? Why is someone bothered? Exactly. Why can't they just leave the original rock stack as it is, convincing as it was, maybe? Because this is the original one coming up with, there's the three little shadows. So all the other ones had the other rock stacks. Why bother someone at NASA or wherever to Photoshop it? For what purpose? Especially when it's so far back in the distance. It's not going to really make much of a difference. It's a very peculiar thing. So it's just a weird anomaly there that I spotted. Again, Apollo 17, rocks similar to each other. This is from, I think, it might be in the panoramic, possibly. Just wait for it to fire up. There's this, what I look like little castle turrets. Don't know what they are, but these two rocks, pretty much similar sort of shape next to each other.
Oh, that's definitely a clone.
Yeah, they actually remind me of molded sandcastles. You know, it's what kids do at play at the beach.
Sandcastle bucket shape, hasn't it? So yeah, again, why make those? You know, if you've got so many sort of rocks, why particularly place them right next to each other where it's bloody obvious? This is an interesting one. Now and again, I mean, the mountains look pretty good on the Apollo records, but now and again, when looking through them, this is from Apollo 17. Just move Ben to the right there. You got this kind of seam structure just there. I sort of zoom in on that a little bit. We might be able to see it a little bit closer. Looks like a seam just going down there. It's not one of these crosshairs because it's a slight angle. There's a bit of a jump there, but it's this I'm more concerned with, like a sort of seam that's joining a background together.
It looks like they put the background set together right there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If that was on Earth, I'd say it was a stream running down a hill. You know, it looks like a stream bed. But obviously on the moon, there's not.
I think it's a photo composite, personally.
It could be.
Neil, going to the chat, have a look, because this is not the only case of NASA cloning things for no reason. Now they talk about, if you go into the chat, you'll see there's a picture of the Earth NASA have been cloning clouds in Earth pictures.
Oh, well.
Where's the chat? Here we go.
Now, it does mention false globe, so okay, we're on the flat Earth side of things. However, the fact is that these photos do exist, and they do show cloning of clouds. Why? What is the point?
Yeah. It shows that they obviously have a track record, not just on the moon, of creating fake images and passing them off as the real thing.
I'm not
and saying, well, this is a real picture, but it's actually doctored.
I'll just click on that for a second. Let's have a quick look at that. How NASA are just copying and pasting clouds when they create the false globe Earth photos. Okay, so this is definitely flat Earth claimants, I think.
It is, but let's put flat Earth.
Yeah, but even if
let's put flat Earth to the side for the moment, and just on the image. These are NASA images, and they are cloned. I mean, there's no way that those clouds are not copied and pasted.
Well, that is definitely a created Earth by the looks of things.
So why do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of CGI. Sorry, there's plenty of supposedly real images of the Earth. That definitely looks. I mean, of course, they always have to have the United States slap bang in the middle with no clouds over it to give it kind of like the clear look, the dominant country of the world type of thing, And
the thing is, it's almost like they're taking the piss, because if this was a job assigned to me to add some more clouds, for instance, as like a client brief, I would not put them side by side.
Yeah.
I would take a bit of a cloud from the opposite and then kind of like flip it horizontally, twist it around a bit, change the proportions, kind of take one bit and add it to another bit and clone it and mix it. I would not simply take one bit, lift it up and plonk it right next to it.
Yeah, it's bloody stupid.
It's stupid.
Yeah, well, that's just because it's easier to do when you do it side by side, because the blue water is going to change color, and if you move it too far, you'll see the block that you put in.
But
also,
if you're an amateur in Photoshop, that's the best you're going to do.
The brightness and the hue and everything. There's ways around that quite easily.
I can't help thinking that maybe the reason they're doing this, and this actually goes back to the anomalies in the Apollo photos as well. I mean, I know Bennett and Percy say they'll put in there deliberately. It could be also that they have a very low opinion of people, average people.
I think it's taking the piss, Ben.
Yeah.
I think they're laughing at us.
Yes,
There's an element of that as well. I mean, especially if you get into I don't want to get too esoteric, but of course there is occult symbolism in all government. Everything governments do, they put occult symbolism in, and in their beliefs, in the belief system of some of these groups. By doing, they do it as a part of a spell. It's almost like casting a spell.
Mm.
More Apollo. I put Apollo 18, but I mean Apollo 17. Double rocks.
Yeah, I think you meant Apollo 18.
Yeah, that's one with the monsters, isn't it? So here we go. Look at that rock there. Very angular looking thing. And then it's next door to something similar with this kind of, curved thing. And then again, this is the same rocks that we saw earlier. This is like duplicated almost next door to each other. You've got this thing here, this thing here, this thing here, that thing there, along with the sandcastle rocks. Very peculiar sort of thing. Right, let's get out of this one.
Before you do that, now I'm just going to show you a quick thing again in the chat box of NASA's Earth pictures over the decades.
Oh yes, they're great fun.
Okay.
What the hell is going on with that? I mean, what does Earth look like? Which is Earth?
Well, it's obviously nice and blue because we're clearing it up a lot. We're cleaning up the planet.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't if they wanted to create an enhanced image, it wouldn't bother me. But if they just say that it's enhanced, this is an enhanced photograph or an edited photograph or something, rather than just saying, well, this is the Earth, this is what it looks like from space. I'd prefer that. Is it because perhaps they don't have any ways and means of photographing? I mean, certainly in the days of the Apollo missions, I mean, as I think we talked about before, this was the first manned mission to go higher than a few hundred miles. So there was that big blue marble photo, which apparently showed the entire Earth. What's that? What's that, Neil?
I just sent you the NASA trophy.
Oh, right. Was that Scott's? Oh, right.
Yeah.
What is
Did a
that?
rock look like that?
Looks like a tree stump.
I call it a trophy. It just wraps. It looks like a pipe wrapped around a shaft of some kind.
I've never seen a rock like that. No.
No. Well, that's moon rock.
Very strange.
But it's interesting when you look at all those photographs of all the missions. If you look at the rocks, which are usually quite close to the ground, and invariably, if the sun is behind them, you'll have a shadow on one side of the rock, and that shadow shows no detail at all. And yet, we're told that reflection of sunlight off the lunar surface is enough to illuminate the whole of the shadow side of the lunar lander, which is anything up 10 or 12 foot high. It's so ridiculous that you can actually identify evident flaws in their argument, and they won't address them. I mean, there are so many people out there. There are probably a few guys who are going to get onto their keyboards and start being a keyboard warrior, showing how wonderful they are and how stupid we are. If they're so bloody clever, these people, come onto this show and explain yourselves. Tell us where we've gone wrong. We want to know where we've gone wrong. But no, you're anonymous. You hide behind ridiculous pseudonyms, names that you make up, and you think this is clever. It's not. It's childlike. A 10-year-old kid could do better than most of you. And you dissect what we say in great detail. You put the actual timing of our videos. You put it that we have said this wrong, according to you. How do you know that you're right and we're not? You don't. You're just a keyboard puncher, a keyboard warrior.
I wonder if these so-called keyboard warriors are sometimes AI bots, you know?
Oh, they could be. That's a good point.
They do seem to sound like each other very much indeed. I mean, that's a good way. I mean, I think we've got to finish soon.
I can smell tea as I'm here.
Right, but you know,
that's my cue.
That's a good way to give Marcus a finishing statement. Actually, you know what you just said, which is I could say so. Marcus, we're going to finish soon, but Marcus, you know that's a good way to finish off. I think for you because you just said.
Just one more point. There's a famous magazine that comes out, Space Flights, the British Interplanetary Society in-house publication, and they're very keen on what we're going to do next. We're going to the moon.
Apparently, yeah.
Look at their back cover. You'll see people making an absolute fortune out of Apollo.
It's still an industry.
Space exploration auction. And we have here Apollo 11, lunar module, flown American flag, etc., etc. How much do you think that is going to be sold for, that one there?
I don't know.
A flown American flag.
Don't know.
$50,000.
Wow.
$50,000.
It's an industry, isn't it?
And it's that.
Yeah, I should put this up on eBay.
You should.
Yeah, original.
And that one is from Chris Kraft. He wasn't even a bloody astronaut. But they're selling his headset here.
Oh my God.
We talk about making money out of Apollo.
Yeah.
And all the families of the astronauts, as soon as the astronaut dies, the family takes all the stuff that they collect with Apollo and put it into an auction and make a fortune out of it.
But technically, that's the property of the American people.
Yeah,
isn't
of course it is. Yeah. Of course it is. But you know, who's following up on that? I mean, I got my piece of moon rock.
Yes, the famous moon rock.
That's about $1 million. That piece of moon rock. Somebody wants to buy it from me. It's not for sale, but NASA,
I think Alan Bean has got the handle on making money. He so-called puts a little bit of moon dust in his paintings, and sells them for $500,000.
Wow!
That's
okay. Now, if those people, I mean, it'd be some executive office, corporations, whatever, buying them for their lobbies or whatever, stuff like that, right? But if they actually realize that it's just dirt from a junkyard.
This is exactly like the scandals you hear all the time about an art gallery that's caught displaying a fake painting, and it turns out when the investigation comes that everyone knows it's fake, and the people in the art gallery know it's fake, but they come to an agreement. They conspire not to tell anyone because they benefit from people believing it's real, and so they just keep quiet. Let's just not tell anyone. Let them think it's real, and of course that's they could pay at the door to come in, you know.
Right, but a painting with moon dust in it, a Geiger counter will tell you if it is or not.
Well, in that case,
according
it's
to Albion, they didn't go far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belts.
No.
So there we go. Right,
So
I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap this up now, guys, if that's all right. So, Ben, do you want to do the honors?
Yep, I just want to say thank you very much, all of you. We've had Marcus Allen, Scott Henderson, Andrew Chaplin, and Neil Geddes-Ward back again for another episode. I mean, it doesn't matter how many of these we do; new things keep coming up all the time. And it's interestingly, we're now in 2021. Next year, 2022, will be the 50th anniversary of the supposed last mission to the moon, which is Apollo 17. When that mission took off, no one ever went back to the moon for 50 years next year. So that'll be an occasion to mark. And who knows? I've got a feeling the Artemis mission, we'll have to discuss that as well in a future episode too, because there's a lot, because that is in the advanced planning stages now. Will NASA get back to the moon? Or if they say they're going to go and not go again, or will they really go this time? Well, viewers, you'll have to tune in to find out. But many, many thanks to Neil, Andy, Marcus, and Scott. Appreciate being on again. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the Apollo Detectives. I've been Ben Emlyn-Jones. Stay tuned.